Century birthday.
Yep. Celebrations for all of you members of parliament, for all of you honorable members of parliament who have been in this house, who have added a stone to the place that we all sanctify and call a place of resolute for governance, constitutionalism and rule of law. There's no better way also to say congratulations to Honorable Speaker of Parliament, the Right Honorable Rebecca Aditwara Kadaga, for steering well this honorable house, Jacob Olana, Honorable Jacob Olanya, and your teams. All the teams at
the commissions, the committees,
all the people, the support staff, the security, everyone who puts their effort every morning to make sure this house is profound, safe and sound also for you to serve Ugandans. We celebrate with you today 100 years, but we also put you in the hands of God so that you will be able to see another 100 years. And of course also to cause change in this great, beautiful nation. Now we'll take a break. When we come back, Jagenda Semakula also will be taking us through a couple of another trajectory of events with the Prime Minister of Uganda. Good morning. Thank you so much for watching Good Morning Uganda and for always keeping it with us here on UBC.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
The day the world stopped was the day we found where to go. From now on, we're not going to leave anything on our plates, because we've learned to savor the moments that were always there, and they never tasted this good.
Enjoy great value from Airtel with the all-new My Pakalast combo offers. We have customized especially for you the best deals on minutes, data and SMS with our 3-in-1 My Pakalast combo to give you the best value as you stay in touch with friends and family. To activate My Pakalast voice combo, dial *100*2*1# to get started.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Parliament of Uganda will mark 100 years of legislation on Tuesday, 23rd March 2021. On this day, Parliament shall debate a motion for a resolution of Parliament to recognize its achievements over the years. The precursor of the present-day Parliament of Uganda was the Legislative Council, LEGCO, established by the British Colonial Office. The LEGCO held its first meeting on Wednesday, 23rd March 1921 at the Government House in Entebbe and thereafter at the Town Hall, now KCCA headquarters, before moving to the current home at the Parliament Building in 1962 upon Uganda attaining independence. The public is invited to follow the day's proceedings that will be broadcast live. This message is brought to you by the Clerk to Parliament.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Sinuk Uganda Limited, in partnership with Bunyoro Research Agency and Development Organization, BRADO, presents to you the Sinuk Q1 National Content Supplier Development A-Conference 2021 under the theme Strengthening Local SMEs for Effective Participation in the Oil and Gas Development Phase in Uganda. Panelists include Mr. Alex Byamkama, National Content Officer, Petroleum Authority of Uganda, Martin Byarhanga, Executive Director of Bunyoro Research Agency and Development Organization, Mr. Matthew Charlie-Gonza, National Content Manager, Sinuk Uganda Limited, Engineer Fred Musinguzi, Chairperson of Bunyoro Business Club, Mr. John Walusimbi, Executive Director, Federation of Small and Medium Enterprises in Uganda, Ms. Sylvia Kirabo, Head, Marketing and Public Relations, UNBS, and moderated by Mr. Biencha Fred. The event will be live on UBC TV on Thursday, the 25th of March 2021 from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Proudly brought to you by Sinok Uganda Limited in partnership with Bunyoro Research Agency and Development Organization.
That's their way of stopping HIV. What about you?
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Face pandemics and disasters that endanger the people and the planet, we must correctly identify the needs of the people based on real-time data from the grassroots before making decisions. People's representatives in Parliament are well placed to bring this information to governments. Secondly, Parliament support the prevention of and recovery from disasters through the budget process and monitoring to ensure effective and inclusive implementation. Uganda's experience in fighting COVID-19 showed that interstate collaboration fosters better management of pandemics. Parliament should be facilitators of this teamwork. Finally, the pandemic has shaken trust levels between states, which affects multilateral cooperation. We can help rebuild trust between countries through our interparliamentary networks.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Hello, my name is Dr. Henry Dungu, a consultant in hematology and oncology. Health promotion and disease prevention programs focus on keeping people healthy. They aim to engage and empower individuals and communities to choose healthy behaviors and make changes that reduce the risk of developing chronic diseases and other illnesses. Join me on New Health Chat every Thursday at 9 p.m. on UBC TV, sponsored by National Medical Stores, who are mandated to procure, store and distribute essential medicines and medical supplies to all public health facilities in the country.
Welcome to English in a Minute. This is a weasel. These wild animals are small and tricky.
Wow, Anna. Looks like you could use some help. Let me carry that.
Thanks, Jonathan. I can always count on you. Jessica, not so much.
She weaseled out of helping you again, didn't she?
Yes, she did. She's a weasel.
To weasel out of something means to successfully avoid doing something in a dishonest or clever way. This phrasal verb has a mostly negative meaning. You can also call someone a weasel, like Anna did. some animals just have a bad reputation. And that's English in a minute.
If you want to benefit from the cabbage, you can decide to go for the dry season planting or the wet season planting. Those are key things to look at. But the other bit is about the yield and the maturity period.
Agriculture has been for years forming the backbone of Uganda's economy, contributing approximately 37% of local growth, with 80% of the population practicing agriculture.
Green tea is different from black tea. Green tea does not go through the fermentation process of the factory, meaning that it has retained all the medicinal values in it.
This is a good leaf for plucking.
When it is already marked, so like it has the marks, it is very easy for a farmer to just follow those markings and then drop.
Join us every Wednesday as we showcase comprehended and well-researched episodes on agriculture, on the new innovations, planting, harvesting, modern technologies, and more you would like to know in the farming field.
The farmers, they no longer bring the more of comb honey.
So after extracting the honey from the frames, then they are removed and placed back in a super.
Farm Matters, a program where all your farming needs are addressed.
Solution to farmers for what they need. What farmers need is income in their pocket, isn't it? It's about money in the pocket.
This program has helped me to improve farming skills. Keep watching Farm Matters at UBC.
It is intellectually engaging.
Court does not sit to waste its time. If you have no defense, it chases you.
It is a ruling on the foundations. Business has been conducted in a certain way.
Banks take money from us, depositors, all over.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
One wise man once said that you cannot know where you're heading when you do not know where you've come from. It is only when you know your history that will greatly determine your future. But also it's not all about years and years going by. For every time you celebrate a period of time, say a year, you have to examine where you've come from, where you are, the challenges, the mistakes, to avoid a recap of the bad and also uphold the good. With me is Jagenda Semakula, with whom we are going to be discussing 100 years of Parliament. What have been the challenges? What have been the opportunities? What good should Parliament cling on? And in case there are uncertainties, what is that the Parliament of Uganda, as it celebrates 100 years, should avoid? Jagenda.
Well, Chirabo.
Good morning.
A very good morning to you, Chirabo, and of course, good morning to all our viewers of Good Morning Uganda on this special day and this special occasion today. We are at Parliament, celebrating 100 years of Parliament, together with Parliament itself.
Well, also one of the things that I want to clarify every time I get an opportunity is, yes, they are 100 years. One was asking me about Chirabo. I'm on my social media, I'm saying you're celebrating 100 years. We are talking about the 10th Parliament, not knowing that, yes, the first sitting of the Legislative Assembly happened on this very date. That is in the year 1921. And it was at now the National Meteorological School in Entebbe. By then, those were chambers of the High Court. This is where the first meeting or the first Parliament sat. And when you count from 1921, on the 23rd of March till date, it clocks 100 years, and that is why we are celebrating. We celebrate Parliament prior to independence and also as we've gone along moving. Jagenda.
Well, that's very important. Maybe to just make an addition to what you're saying is people should appreciate that when we talk about Uganda, we talk about Uganda's independence at I think 59 years now. It doesn't mean that the life of Uganda started 59 years ago. There was Uganda before 1962. So when we talk about the 11th Parliament, as people do want to know, is we now count them as the first Parliament, talking about now the post-independent period that we
count the first parliament from 1962, our first parliament in 1962, subsequently coming on. But remember that we also had a break between 1971 and 79 during the times of Idi Amin Dada, where parliament actually went into recess. He did that with parliament, and again we had to get back to parliament after the Idi Amin era. So that's how we've been counting this parliament. So somebody shouldn't say in 100 years, and then of course they know that the term of parliament is just 5 years. So these would be the 20 parliaments or more parliaments, whatever that is. So that is actually what really explains it. We are talking about the period that we got independence, coming upwards to where we are currently.
So, Jagan, we want to examine Parliament at 100 years, right from the times when we hadn't yet gotten our independence, like I told you earlier, from the date that is this very date in 1921 till today. We understand by then that wasn't an African parliament. It didn't have any representation, not until 1945 when we had the first Africans join a parliament, but of course this didn't come on a silver platter. It was through agitation. One of the things that is very important to note, therefore, is that Ugandans deliberately, intentionally participated in ensuring that they take control of their affairs, even in the August House. Today, 100 years down the road, have Ugandans, have parliamentarians upheld that?
Well, what is most important that you and me and our viewers need to understand and appreciate is the most important thing in any society or in any country or in the world is actually called the Constitution. That is the most important thing that we need to honor and respect and get to. So when you talk about Parliament, of course, one of the most important things is that it gives us what a Constitution is. Now, when you get into our history, or just history, and talk about history as it is, you'll notice that Aristotle, one of the great philosophers, defined the Constitution as a fundamental law, or the fundamental law, sets of fundamental laws that set to govern societies and customs and all the things. Now, that's according to Aristotle, which is why a constitution is actually very important. Now, you notice that world all over, when we talk about these things that we talk about is, you talk about, for example, whether we've actually achieved the aspirations of our independence or quite a number of things. And when you give the history that you just gave to us here of the parliament and why it started and all the things and how the Ugandans or the first Africans came into being part of the legislative councils or whatever that means, is still it was intended to actually formulate a law of how to actually govern and see how to foster posterity of nations or societies, and which is why we saw Parliament coming on and doing all the things. Now when you talk about, of course, 100 years later, lots of things have happened. You talked about the challenges and opportunities are in. Think about somebody who is 100 years today. If there's anybody that you know that is 100 years today, they've had challenges in this world, they have had opportunities, and they have had all the things come to them. Similarly to a living institution like this today, because there is nobody that you have in Parliament here, not any of the legislators, not any of the administrators in here, not any of those leading Parliament that have actually lived for all these years that they've been here. There are not so many Ugandans who are 100 years. So when you look at Parliament, and of course these are 100 years, yes, there are quite a number of things, and like I said, the most important thing that Parliament gives to us is that document called the Constitution, which governs our societies. And to me, yes, I think that's where we are, because when you look into our history, of course, from when it started coming to the legislative councils, and of course, you talk about 1921, just after getting the order in council of 1920, and now that's when we now start to show face and come up and try to appear and be there. So that history, of course, is very rich to us, that we've evolved steadily and slowly to where we are today, that we have gotten to a level where we've even now gotten to a point of domesticating many of these legislations to actually suit in our societies, because it is natural law. Societies keep evolving and changing and shifting and having lots of things happening to them. So we've not stayed there, but of course we've seen things happening now. Remember that constitutions could
made a couple of amendments,
exactly, could
and
be
termed
written
some sections of the law as outdated, therefore coming up with legislation that suits the current times and the desires of Ugandans.
Yes, which is true, because when you look into the laws of Uganda, there are quite so many laws that are archaic, laws that do not apply today in our societies, when they were written at that time, they were applicable to the societies, they were applicable to the people at that time. Not anymore, not any longer. That's why many of these laws have actually gone several amendments. And now people talk about Uganda's constitution as one of those that is very easy to amend and see. To me, I think it's not just actually a problem. When you look at the American Constitution, it's been amended, I think, 27 times. And of the 27 times, you notice that the 10 times were actually bills of rights and the original constitution itself. So you could actually say, away from the bills of rights, then you can say they've amended their constitution 17 times, and in a span of 400 years or so. And people think, yes, that's how a constitution should actually be held or should be, not one. Uganda's constitution, for example, now you notice we've amended, I think, 3 times in a span of about 25 years. And to me, I don't think whether the rigidity or the flexibility of the constitution should impede the aspirations of the people, because by and large, this document is supposed to give us that. And so when we talk about history of the parliament, for example, to me, just the constitution that we have of 1995 is so paramount that it actually helps us to either go forward or decide not to move on forever.
Talking about the legislation, the amendments that we have, I'll take you back, Jag, and of course to our viewers, as we celebrate 100 years of Uganda's parliament today. Are we still treasuring, respecting the dreams of our forefathers of this nation that sought for Pan-Africanism, for Africa-based legislation? When you look at Parliament today, 10th, 9th Parliament, the laws that we've had, of late you would find that so much of our laws may actually not be Ugandan in nature. They could be passed by a Ugandan Parliament, but of course, when you look at the forces behind these laws, do they really still uphold that dream that yes, we wanted a constitution that is Ugandan made, laws that are typically from the desires and the wills of the people of Uganda?
Those are there in the constitution, and I think the aspirations are yes. Me, I'm a believer that yes, we got independence, and if we're squandering it, then it's with actually doing it. That's what I do believe. I don't want to subscribe to a school of thought that says we are not independent, or we did not even get that independence. We have this sovereignty, and that's why we actually do what we're doing today. And to me, yes, I think there are laws here that we've actually made and domesticated them to suit our... Talk about, for example, when you talk about decentralization, when people talk about failing on the other things, you notice that we've decentralized politically everything. That today we elect a president and we elect up the local chairperson one. Now that's political decentralization. Nobody forces us to do that. We decided that this is actually what we shall do. And Chirabo is elected as an LC1 chairperson. Jagana is voted as an LC3 chairperson. Pima is voted as an LC something chairperson, like that. And we go, till the presidency. So when you want to fault decentralization on one hand, then you also have to praise it on the other hand, that it's given us all these leaders. Now, and of course the laws that we use every day, take them to court, seek amendments, seek all these other things, we do them by ourselves. Now, when we talk about the European nature in it and stuff like that, you'll also notice that, yes, by and large, we are again members of the international community. Now, when people talk about the international community, they think Uganda is not one of those. That's why people keep saying, yeah, until the international community comes in, but who makes the international community? If Uganda is out and another is out and Kenya is out and Tanzania and Sudan and Burundi and everybody, then of course the international community collapses. So we are all members of that family. We are brothers in the international community. And so you will notice that for what you're talking about here, I think it's Article 38 of the International Court of Justice that establishes the international law. And because of that, you find ourselves also now getting to that. And that's how we now get the declarations of the UN, like the Human Rights Declaration and several others. So when you talk about human rights, when you talk about all these other rights, when you talk about all these things, now we talk about these things because of the international world, the international community,
or the international
signatories. Exactly, we are. Because we become members of those by ratifying the treaties, by ratifying those treaties, by domesticating those protocols and declarations and commitments and quite a number of things. So that's how you find that certain legislations is actually, you want to look at it as foreign in nature, because yes, it was passed in a UN General Assembly meeting somewhere, and it's talking about this particular right or this particular legislation or this particular declaration, which when we get home here as signatories, as members to that protocol, we domesticate it here into our own issues. There are those that are binding, there are those that are actually not binding. And so when you talk about this, people would actually think, yes, Parliament should be discussing predominant, but yes, it does, because you've had members of Parliament today, when they come to House, they bring what they call issues of national importance, and somebody raises the hand before the Speaker and says, Madam Speaker or Mr. Speaker, Honorable so-and-so, this is an issue of standing on an issue of national importance, and this issue concerns my people in this particular constituency, where we possibly now have castle rustling, or there is this raid on our animals, or there is this disease, or there is this catastrophe, or there is this disaster, which is, and of course legislate for purposes of that. So to me, I think, yes, steadily, we couldn't have lived in the dreams of our fathers forever. The world has changed and so many things are changing. That's why even the laws have actually had to change to suit the society in which we live today.
Well, we're still looking at 100 years of Parliament that we celebrate today. It was on this very day that we had the first Parliament sit in Uganda. Of course, not at this particular venue. This was after independence, but first in Entebbe, then later they shifted to current City Hall, that is KCCA. Then upon independence, achieving independence, 1962, just at the entrance of Parliament, you see then Prime Minister Dr. Apollo Mitorobote laid a foundation stone for this magnificent shelter that has housed Parliament till date. Jagenda. Parliamentarians are representatives of the people. Over these 100 years, we want to look and really examine, has Parliament been representative of the electorate? Because when you look at the 100 years, first we had regional representation. When the white man felt that they should include people in the parliament led by the International Assembly, one, they looked at kingdoms. There was Uganda, there was Busoga,
Bunyoro,
and Bunyoro. So they said, no, come and represent your people. Through the scale of 100 years celebrated today, have we achieved people representation in the parliament and representing their views and their opinions?
Well, whether representing their views and opinions is something subject to debate, but for representation, it's a flat yes. We have, and nobody can contest that, or nobody can actually argue about that. The representation, that's why I actually talked about political decentralization, that with that, we've actually achieved that there is not, you can't find that you go to civil service today, and maybe you have a retired civil servant who is maybe talk about any position in government, a commissioner, a director, an ED, you know, their contracts have expired and all the things, and the office is vacant, or somebody is in acting capacity, or there's just somebody keeping the office running, but that can't happen politically. That can't happen to Parliament. You lose a member of Parliament today, and in a couple of weeks you have another member of Parliament elected to represent the people. You lose a district chairperson today, then after burial, a few days later, you have another district chairperson. Now, the rate at which we love political representation should not also spill over to the other positions. That when Jagenda in civil service clocks 60 and he's moved out, he's retired, he goes, this office of the ED should actually not stay vacant, because there are people who do not take decisions ultimately because they are in acting capacity. I am only deputy ED, I am only deputy this, I am only a commissioner, I'm not yet a director, I'm only acting, and there are certain decisions that keep getting affected in there because somebody is not fully in charge, which does not happen in politics. You don't have a deputy member of parliament that when one dies, then you pick somebody who will act as a member of parliament. We will outrightly get into another election and see it happen. So with political representation, or the representation that you're talking about, yes, that we've achieved 100% without doubt. That you cannot have for a single moment a member of parliament, even if somebody just resigns voluntarily, to actually say, I am resigning my post as member of parliament for this constituency, and they write to the speaker and they declare the position vacant, just count a few days or months, then you'll have another member of parliament in there. With so many applications from, the constituency, so many applications, one person has resigned, but when you get into that other election, you have 10, 11, 12 people coming to actually say, I also want to come and represent you. Now, whether they represent the aspirations of the people, or the
qualification
is another thing that we'll get to, because what are these aspirations of the people? What are these opinions of the people? What are these things that they're actually representing at the end of the day?
Looking at 100 years of parliament, we now look at the most significant role of parliament, that is coming up or passing laws that will guide governance of the country. We've had a number of controversial bills. We've had some that have been pro-people, and maybe a few that have not been. But let's look through the lenses of 100 years of parliament. How have we moved as Parliament of Uganda as we celebrate today?
Now, whether we've progressed, it's because of Parliament, and whether we have regressed, it's still because of Parliament. That I could.
Have we progressed or regressed?
Either way, whether we have now, that also it is relative. The progression is relative, and the regression is also relative. But where we are today is still subject to discussion. But like I said, by and large, it still comes back to Parliament. Now, you will notice that, like I told you, a constitution can be a written document, or it actually cannot be a written document. But these are fundamental laws that you agree upon and say, here is where we are and where we go. So when you look at Uganda, its development and maybe things that we've not achieved, you will still notice that it is an issue of Parliament, and that's why Parliament is actually very key, very pivotal, and it's a very strong pillar, because it is Parliament at the end of the day that actually informs or gives the judiciary, because when Parliament legislates, then the other day when judiciary is arbitrating us, when judiciary is interpreting the laws or do all the things to accelerate and to see how we should move on, it is still the Parliament, because legislation by and large is the discretion or the mandate of the Parliament. That's what the Constitution says. That's what it is actually. That's what it is. There are not so many laws that we get from the judiciary that they do through legislations and maybe rulings and judgments and all the things. But legislation is entirely now. When you look at a country like Uganda, for example, today, you look at appropriation. One of the most important things that Parliament does here is to debate the appropriations bill. Now, the appropriations bill is national cake. How do we slice it to see that Kirabo benefits and Jagan and everybody and stuff like that. So that's what the Parliament does. So for legislation,
for legislation, if you're to look at 100 years of Parliament, how have we performed?
In terms of what?
In terms of coming up with good legislation that pushes the country forward, because that is one of the most significant roles of Parliament.
We've passed. We have a pass mark on that. We have a pass mark on that.
Is it appropriation?
Not just appropriation, but legislation itself.
Legislation,
yes, exactly. Because if you talk about laws, I have personally taken trouble to. I actually have the record of the Hansons from 1993 until up to yesterday. All these legislations, very brilliant, very good, very, they actually a plus. But that's not
very good for.
They're good laws. They're good laws. The legislation is actually very good. That yes, we have very good laws that we've domesticated. We have very good policies. We have very good things that we've actually put up. But the issue, you've had everybody talk about implementation. That how to implement these laws. But we've written very good laws that people have come here, benchmarked from us, and taken them. When Kenya was writing their constitution in 2010, they actually benchmarked the Ugandan constitution, and the people participated in the election of 2013 in Kenya. The likes of Martha Karua, the likes of Musalia Mudavadi, the likes of Moses Wetangula, the likes of Peter Kenneth and others actually came here to study the constitution of Uganda, to look at it, and they actually said it's one of the best constitutions that they had interacted with in the world. And of course, it's more of a copy and paste with just a few modifications here and there. But yet again, just 10 years later, they are finding problems with this.
They build the bridge.
Exactly.
They're now looking at how best they can continue.
10 years later, later, they actually want to redo it, you know, because they looked at a situation at the neighbor's house and adopted that thing, took it there, it worked for them for 10 years. They're now thinking of how to again redo it, which is okay.
Which is okay
because, yes, you don't have, it shouldn't be rigid.
We're not prisoners of our constitution.
No. It shouldn't be rigid.
Finally, time is not so much on our side, but there is this question that is on the minds of many Ugandans as we celebrate 100 years, which I also want to get Jagenda's opinion. There have been comparisons with the different parliaments we've had, right from the CA, the Constituency Assembly, that came up with this magnificent constitution that we cherish as Ugandans, like you've just alluded to that. That over time, quality of debates and quality of members of parliament has deteriorated. That even as we come to the 10th parliament, going to the 11th parliament, compared to the previous parliaments, this is a challenge that is addressed by the parliaments now and those to come.
You want a comparison of the parliaments? Well, to me, I think the best parliament, if I'm not just reading from history, will be the CA. To me, it will be the CA, which I think was the 4th or 5th. That to me is the best parliament, where you had Moses Chigongo as a deputy chairperson, or the quote-unquote deputy speaker, where you had General Museveni himself as the chairman of the NRC. What is strange about that parliament is that the people who were in that parliament did not have the education that we do have today. And what they did when they legislated to actually debate in that Constituent Assembly to give and to deliver to us the Constitution in September 1995, it was a parliament that was nationalistic at heart, was a parliament that had Ugandans at heart, was a parliament that really had people who exhibited, there were Africans, there were true Pan-Africanists, there were nationalists, there were people who had Uganda at heart. They didn't come to parliament to have contacts, they didn't come to parliament to make money, they didn't come to parliament to get contacts, and you know, I didn't come to parliament to actually see how to make deals, because many people want this honor today of if I'm a member of parliament, then that's a very good business card for me to actually see how to move on my business. These are people who are committed to laying a foundation for this country and serving a country and serving Uganda. So to me, when you talk about that, I've had an opportunity, like I told you, when you read the answers of 93, 94, 95, come now to the post constitutional parliament now, 96, coming on the times of Bayume Wapakabulo and second is, you know, that was a parliament that, yes, you looked at and they gave a very good foundation. They laid a very good foundation for this country, politically, economically, and quite a number of things now. Yes, there are modifications that we can't get to today, but yes, like you said, the debate is one thing and a number of things, because today we've moved from patriotism, from being nationalistic, from being Ugandans at heart, to actually now becoming populists, because at the end of the day, we want to please our people who voted for us.
Well, we can take a whole day, but celebrations are still ongoing as we celebrate 100 years of Parliament. Yes, so much has been said and so much you still know as we celebrate these 100 years. But some of the challenges that we look at that a Parliament is faced with today, one is commercialization of politics, where many a times we've lost meaningful debates. We've had laws that maybe would not have passed, but because of commercialization of politics. But also now arises the issue of numbers, where in the previous parliaments they were not so many as they are, so there was more time to articulate issues. Today, with a parliament of about 529 members of parliament.
Not about, but there are 529.
529. So this, what does this reflect if on a particular issue, a member of parliament, these days they're given 2 minutes? So what then would a person deliberate? How can we have reasonable debates on the floor of parliament for us to have greater rules? How do we fight this? Can we decommercialize politics? Can we also maybe look at the numbers in parliament for us to have better deliberations at the floor of parliament? Well, from me and the entire team, we want to thank you so very much for having been with us from the hour of 6:30 until now when it is 10. But also thank Parliament, most of the Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament, Rebecca Daga, and her entire team that she works with, for having hosted us today as we've been coming to you live from Parliament. There will be a live broadcast of the celebrations. But from now, I just want to wish you a lovely day. Let's maintain peace and enjoy the celebrations of 100 years of Parliament. Good morning and keep it on UBC TV.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.